Malawi. Weather experts say another tropical cyclone, Halima, is building up. Weather experts say another cyclone is building up after a detection of developments in the Indian Ocean northeast of Madagascar Island that may result into a new tropical cyclone. Officials from the Department of Climate Change and Meteorological Services say they will be informing the nation of any threat the developments may bring in the country. According to Yobu Kachiwanda, spokesperson for the Department of Climate Change and Meteorological Services, cyclones are given names alphabetically. Therefore, any next tropical cyclone will be named Halima. Cyclone Anna had been the most devastating, killing over 40 people and causing huge damage to infrastructure, including buildings and roads. Tanzania. Maasai community threatened by Tanzania's hunting plan. More than 1,000 community members in northern Tanzania have gathered to protest against the government's plan to evict the people of Loliondo from their ancestral land. According to International Land Coalition Africa, more than 73,000 indigenous people from Loliondo and about 90,000 in the Ngorongoro Conservation Area face eviction to make way for elite tourism and trophy hunting. The government plans to lease Ngorongoro Conservation Area, home to over 1 million wildebeest and the endangered black rhino, to hunting company Otalo Business Corporation, which belongs to the royal family in the United Arab Emirates. According to the country's 1999 legislation that governs the land management, all land in Loliondo is classified as village land. For many years, the government has accused Maasai communities and their cattle herds in Loliondo and Ngorongoro of encroaching on important wildlife breeding grounds and disrupting migratory routes for wildebeest. Local Maasai leaders in the disputed areas have called the latest move to establish a wildlife hunting corridor on their ancestral land absurd, claiming that it would effectively deny thousands of herders a place to live as well as access to pasture and water for their animals. The Maasai, a nomadic ethnic group on East Africa who have coexisted peacefully with wildlife for centuries while protecting the area's ecological balance, have come under increasing pressure from commercial interests that threaten their way of life. Zimbabwe. The US government sued in Gauteng High Court over Zimbabwe sanctions. In a potentially groundbreaking international case, a group called the Zimbabwe Anti-Sanctions Movement, ZASM, has filed papers in the Gauteng High Court asking it to declare US sanctions against Zimbabwe unlawful, unconstitutional and invalid. If successful, the case could see the beginning of normalized financial relations with South Africa's northern neighbor. South African and international banks are reluctant to deal with Zimbabwe, even in cases where this is not explicitly prohibited, for fear of incurring heavy penalties from the US. Among those cited as respondents are the US President, President of the US Senate, Speaker of the House, Treasury Secretary, and several US and South African banking groups. The ZASM court application says sanctions applied by the US on Zimbabwe prejudices ordinary Zimbabweans by denying the country access to international credit, markets, and by cutting off international aid and donor assistance. South Africa. South African watchdog targets Meta over its abuse of dominance. Meta is facing prosecution in South Africa after the country's competition regulator, the Competition Commission, found as uncompetitive its intent to block the government startup GovChat and hashtag Let's Talk from using its WhatsApp business API. The watchdog, which has been investigating claims of unfair conduct against the startup since March 2021, referred Meta, formerly Facebook, for prosecution to the Competition Tribunal, which adjudicates complaints of restrictive practices and abuse of dominance. In its referral, the regulator recommends that Meta is made to pay the maximum penalty, a fine of 10% of the US company's local turnover. The Commission alleges that Meta imposed unfair restrictions on data usage by the startup, limiting its ability to innovate and develop new products and services that could potentially compete with Meta's products. In addition to the platform being a source of alerts and complaints on civic issues like potholes on roads, GovChat has been used by the government to process social security applications, including distress support during the COVID-19 pandemic. Over 13.3 billion applications have been submitted through the GovChat platform. The referral for prosecution comes days after competition supervisory bodies from 5 African countries, including South Africa, signed a memorandum of understanding that would, among other agenda, foster collaboration action against the obstacles that limit emergence and expansion of African digital platforms. The other parties to the argument were Egypt, Kenya, Mauritius, and Nigeria. Mali to stop broadcast by French radio and TV stations. Mali's ruling military government has ordered French broadcasters RFI and France 24 off air due to falsely accusing the government of committing abuses. Both RFI Radio and France 24 Television, who receive funding from France, will not be accessible in Mali for an undetermined time, according to the government spokesman Col Abdoulaye Maiga. In a statement, Mali said it was taking the action because both channels had reported on allegations made by UN's Michelle Bachelet and the rights group Human Rights Watch that Malian soldiers had killed numerous civilians in recent months. Col Abdoulaye Maiga said that the false allegations were made in reports on 14th and 15th March in which RFI gave the floor to alleged victims of abuses committed by the Malian army and the Russian mercenary group Wagner. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, follow. Nigeria. UK suspends visas for Nigerians, prioritizes Ukrainian nationals. The United Kingdom has temporarily suspended applications for work, study and family visas for Nigerians, stating that it was prioritizing applications made under the Ukraine Family Scheme and in response to the humanitarian crisis arising from the Ukraine war. In a statement, the UK said the Ukraine Family Scheme allows applicants to join family members or extend their stay in the UK. They will also be able to live, work and study in the UK and access public funds. The statement said, as a result of this decision, the UK Visa and Immigration (UKVI) has temporarily suspended priority and super priority services for new study, work and family applications for Nigerians. The embassy noted that applicants should not visit Visa Application Center but wait till they are conducted by Visa Application Center that their visas are ready for collection. This is coming after Europe has been called out for numerous racial and discriminatory actions and incidences towards Africans, Asians and Middle Eastern, not only in Ukraine but also its neighboring countries. Ethiopia. Israel bans Ethiopian Easter pilgrims. Israel is reportedly banning the entry of Ethiopian pilgrims who want to embark on a pilgrimage to the country during this year's Easter celebrations. Local media reports travel and tour companies in the country have received a letter from Israel's Population and Immigration Authority stating that any Ethiopian traveler who wants to visit Israel will need to contact the authority personally and receive permission to enter. However, tourists from other countries do not have to follow this same protocol, as tour companies can generally submit a group application for tourists traveling as a group. The authorities' letter claimed that the move was only out of concern that the Ethiopian tourists will not head back home due to the ongoing conflict in their country. According to Israel's Population and Immigration Authority, the policy was deemed necessary allegedly because in the past, Ethiopian tourists have overstayed their visit. This decision comes immediately after the Israeli government unanimously approved paving the way for renewing immigration from Ethiopia from among the community of descendants of Jews in November of last year. West Africa. Foreign interest behind rise in coups, ECOWAS. The president of Ghana, who is also chair of the West Africa Regional Bloc ECOWAS, has said there is an international dimension to the recent spate of military coups in Africa. Nana Akufo-Addo told an African Union forum that some foreign entities regard coups in Africa as a means of enhancing their regional ambition. He said outside influences were behind disinformation campaigns, undermining the authority of governments in the continent and instigating opposition protests. Mr. Akufo-Addo gave no details on those he thought were linked to the coups. Recent military takeovers in the Burkina Faso, Mali and Guinea areas have prompted calls for African leaders to promote good governance in order to quell disaffection among citizens. 18 African leaders have either modified or eliminated constitutional term limits in the past 2 decades, while another 18 have resisted efforts to institute term limits, according to the Africa Center for Strategic Studies, with most of these countries having experienced civil unrest or coups. Ghana. Small oil producers like Ghana could gain as buyers shun Russian crude. As the US and Europe cut back purchases on Russian oil and energy traders shun it for fear of sanctions, the search is on for other sources. Attention has focused on Western rivals like Iran and Venezuela, both of which are led by governments that the US sought until recently to isolate. But emerging and less developed producers could also play great roles in securing these positions. Among the world's many oil-producing countries, Ghana stands at number 33. As world markets grapple with the current oil price shock, niche producers are in especially favorable positions to secure advantageous contracts and more favorable terms from international energy companies. For example, oil companies typically pay host countries royalties on their revenues that average around 16%. Ghana started oil development in 2007 and now produces about 163,000 barrels per day. South Sudan. UN peacemaking mission in South Sudan extended for a year. The United Nations Security Council has voted to extend the mandate of its peacekeeping mission in South Sudan for 1 more year, calling for political dialogue to prevent the country from returning to civil war. The United States-sponsored resolution received 13 votes in the Council, with China and Russia choosing to abstain. Under the extension, the UN mission in South Sudan will remain in the world's newest nation up until March 15, 2023. The current level of deployment, with the troops ceiling at 17,000 and police ceiling at 2,101, shall be maintained. While China indicated that it was in favor of the extension, the country's deputy UN ambassador Dai Bing criticized the US for pushing for inclusion of many human rights-related texts, resulting in a very unbalanced draft resolution. Under the resolution, the goal of the peacekeeping mission is to prevent a return to civil war in South Sudan, to build durable peace at the local and international levels, and to support inclusive and accountable governance and free, fair, and peaceful elections. The operation is one of the most expensive for the UN, with an annual budget surpassing $1 billion. A deal signed in 2018 by President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar stipulated general elections should be conducted in 2023. Thanks for watching. Please, Somalia. Somalia might miss the deadline to complete elections. Somalia is likely to miss a deadline to conclude long-delayed parliamentary elections as political disagreements continue in the country. The federal government had set a deadline of March 15th to complete the polls, but more than 50 seats in the legislature are yet to be filled. This could in turn delay further the elections of a new president who is normally selected indirectly by MPs. Somalia has already missed several deadlines to conclude voting for lower house of parliament since February last year. The country has struggled to elect new leaders because of wrangles over the composition of the electoral boards and political mistrust between President Mohamed Abdullahi and Prime Minister Mohamed Hussein. Uganda. Uganda arrests key ADF operative. Ugandan police have arrested a suspected prominent recruiter and coordinator of the Allied Democratic Forces rebel group. Police spokesman Fred Enanga said Abdallah Kabanda Musa, alias Mogo, was arrested in central Uganda while allegedly plotting attacks against security agencies and prominent individuals. He said a loaded rifle, 11 mobile phones, and a computer storage device with radical materials were recovered in a raid on the suspect's home. The security agencies suspect he was part of the group that coordinated attacks at the Central Police Station in Kampala in November last year. The attacks prompted the Ugandan army to cross the border into the Democratic Republic of Congo to fight Islamic State IS-linked militants. Tanzania. Mara River fish deaths poisoning to be investigated. Tanzanian Minister of Environment Mr. Selemani Jafo has formed a team to probe the cause of Mara River waters turning blackish as fish have been reported to have died in the river. The 11-person team of experts was unveiled by the minister in Musoma District, Mara region, after a one-day fact-finding visit to the river. During his visit, Mr. Jafo admitted that the situation there was not good and called for urgent steps to be taken to put things in order. The minister also directed the team, apart from investigating the cause, to give long and short-term proposals on what steps should be taken not to encounter the same situation. South Africa. South Africa grounds airline linked to British Airways, citing safety issues. South Africa's aviation regulator has indefinitely grounded a fleet owned by Comair, a British Airways franchise, following a series of safety incidents. This comes a day after the airline was suspended after it failed to convince the South African Civil Aviation Authority (SACAA) that it had adequately addressed the safety issues. Comair operates regional and local flights in South Africa for British Airways and budget airline Kulula. The latest safety incident involving its plane was a flight from East London in Eastern Cape Province to Johannesburg last month with 111 passengers on board. The plane made an emergency landing just a few minutes after taking off, with dramatic videos on social media showing scared passengers crying and praying loudly on board. In a statement, SACAA said Comair operations had in the past month experienced occurrences ranging from engine failures, engine malfunction and landing gear malfunctions. Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe has passed a marriages amendment bill that makes bride price mandatory. Zimbabwe's Marriages Amendment Bill has been signed into law by President Emmerson Mnangagwa following amendments made to the proposed law by the Senate in February 2022. The payment of lobola, bride price, before marriages under customary union is now mandatory, with a clause empowering marriage officers to ascertain whether a bride price was paid. After the approval of the amendments by Senate in February 2022, the bill had to be returned to the National Assembly for it to consider the changes before it was sent to President Mnangagwa. The bill was initially passed in the National Assembly in 2020 but was held up in Senate after traditional leaders objected to a clause that said that payment or non-payment of a bride price could not be regarded as a barrier in solemnizing marriages between two consenting adults if they satisfied other requirements of the law. Ethiopia. Ethiopia buries unifying patriarch of Orthodox Church. The remains of the fourth patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, Abune Mercurius, has been buried. The religious leader served from 1998 to 1991, fled his country for 27 years because of political tensions, and returned in 2018 to unite the split church. He died on March 3rd. He took over the leadership of the church, one of the world's oldest Christian churches, in the late 1980s after his predecessor died of natural causes. But the church split in 1991 over the naming of a new patriarch after the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front (EPRDF) removed the Darg military government from power. Mercurius, seen as hostile to the new regime, was forced to abdicate and later escaped the country to settle in the United States, where he led a breakaway church. Algeria. Algeria president bans export of food. Algeria's President Abdelmajid Tebboune has banned the export of foodstuffs that the country imports, the state news agency has said. The commodities include sugar, oil, pasta, semolina, and wheat derivatives. A government source stated that the president called it economic sabotage to sell commodities that the country does not produce locally. The president's decision also bans importation of frozen meat products. Algeria imports most of its foodstuff. There have been protests in the past over increase in food prices in the country. Mozambique. Cyclone Gombe hits with major damage. Yet another cyclone, dubbed Cyclone Gombe, hit Nampula province with winds of 120 to 160 kilometers per hour and rain of 200 millimeters. The cyclone made landfall in Mongiko district between Ilha do Mozambique and Angoche. It continued west into Malawi. The heavy winds caused extensive damage to buildings with more than 3,000 homes destroyed and many trees uprooted. Of 23 districts in Nampula province, 16 have no electricity. At least 12 people were feared dead. Many zones are still inaccessible. This comes only a few days after Cyclone Anna hit the same area, killing 38 and destroying 12,000 houses. Kenya. Herbal plants faced extinction in some regions due to destruction of indigenous trees. For centuries, the use of herbal medicinal products and supplements has increased tremendously, with most people relying on them for some part of primary health care. Despite the adoption of a modern health system in Kenya's Nandi County, majority of the locals still prefer seeking medical attention from the herbalists. The herbal medicines, which were once in plenty, can hardly be found these days. The degradation of the natural resources is as a result of rising population and human activities, including logging for charcoal. Locals have also been removing indigenous plants from their settlements and growing exotic trees like cypress and blue gum for commercial purposes because they mature faster. Herbalists in the region are now forced to crisscross other regions in search of herbal medicines due to the fact that government forests are the only places where one can get the medicinal trees for extraction. Zimbabwe. The Zimbabwean president wants Kenya's help in lifting Western sanctions. Zimbabwe's president was in Kenya to meet his counterpart President Uhuru Kenyatta as the two countries are seeking to strengthen bilateral ties. The two presidents signed 7 memoranda of understanding on diplomatic consultations, tourism and wildlife conservation, civil aircraft accidents and serious incidents investigations. Other points of discussions included women empowerment and community development, youth affairs, cooperatives, sports and recreation activities. Mnangagwa was reportedly also in Nairobi, more importantly, to lobby Kenya, a member of the UN Security Council, into helping the country get rid of sanctions, as well as getting assurances that Kenya will not be a sanctuary for Zimbabwean opposition politicians. Tanzania. Multi-billion road project to be a hub for the country's business. The country's capital, Dodoma, will soon be a hub of business in East and Central Africa thanks to the ambitious $215 million Dodoma City Outer Ring Road project, which is expected to open business and investment space between Tanzania and other African countries. The project, which will see the country reaping benefits in the economy through the works and transport sectors, has drawn massive attention from economic pundits and normal Tanzanians. On February 9, 2022, President Samia Suluhu Hassan laid the foundation stone for the 112.3-kilometer road project, where she paid tribute to the African Development Bank AFDB Group for providing funding for the project, which is expected to transform the face and image of the country's capital, Dodoma.
Zambia. Zambia's former president Rupiah Banda dies. Former Zambian President Rupiah Banda, 85, has died at his home in Lusaka after a battle with colon cancer. Banda, Zambia's 4th president who ruled the country between 2008 and 2011, he was diagnosed with colon cancer 2 years ago. His son Andrew Banda told a local radio station that his father succumbed after a struggle with colon cancer. The death was also confirmed by President Hakainde Hichilema. After the 2006 general election, he was appointed Zambia's vice president by the late Levi Mwanawasa. He would ascend to Mwanawasa's presidential responsibility after the incumbent suffered a stroke in June 2008 while on assignment in Egypt. Following Mwanawasa's death in August 2008, Banda became acting president. Congo Kinshasa. Scores killed after freight train derails. A train crash in the Democratic Republic of Congo has killed at least 60 people. The train was running between the villages of Kitenta and Buyofwe in Lualaba province in the south of the country when it derailed, coming off the rails, going up a slope, and then crashed. 7 of 10 carriages ended up in the ravine. It is said that the passengers were illegally hitching a ride on the freight train. Dozens were severely injured and taken to the hospital in nearby Lubudi. Much of Democratic Republic of Congo's rail network dates back to the colonial era and has not been well maintained. Ethiopia. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy calls for peace at launch of party's first Congress. Ethiopia's ruling Prosperity Party had launched its first Congress meeting, which will run from the 11th to 14th of March. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed attended the ceremony of the party created in 2019, with the party claiming over 11 million registered and contributing members. The 3-day Congress is held under the theme From Challenge to Elevation. Foreign political parties that include Uganda's National Resistance Movement and South Africa's ANC were among the attendees. Abiy's party pledged to deal with the corruption and continue to defend Ethiopia's sovereignty, with the most urgent call being bringing about peace in the country. The Prosperity Party was established by Prime Minister Abiy after he initiated a process to replace the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, a coalition of 4 major ethnic-based parties and 3 support parties which were crafted by Tigray's People Liberation Front under the leadership of the late Meles Zenawi in 1991. Guinea. Guinea's leaders order halt at large iron ore deposits. Guinea's military rulers have ordered all activities to stop at the Simandu iron ore deposit, believed to be the largest in the world. The reason for this action, they say, is the need to clarify how Guinea's interest will be preserved before work can begin again. The deposit is owned by the mining giant Rio Tinto and a Chinese-backed consortium with the Guinean government holding a 15% stake. The development of the mine was stalled many times, largely over rights disputes. Mining of the 2.5 billion tons of high-grade ore was due to start in 2015. Kenya. Kenya lifts mandatory mask wearing in quarantine. Kenya's Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe has said that wearing of face masks in open public spaces had been lifted and full in-person worship for vaccinated persons restored. However, the CS encouraged the use of masks and adherence to social distance rules in all indoor spaces. He also said quarantine will be stopped. The changes follow a significant decline in COVID-19 infections in the country. Positivity rates have remained below 5% for the past month. Kenyans have been urged to get vaccinated, with more than 7 million people fully vaccinated, comprising of 28.5% of the general population of adults. Kenya had imposed mandatory mask wearing in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. Zimbabwe. Mnangagwa accuses the West of destabilizing Zimbabwe. Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has accused Western diplomats of trying to destabilize the southern African country following criticism over growing cases of political violence ahead of next year's election. United Kingdom legislators last week expressed outrage after Zimbabwe's Vice President Constantino Chiwenga threatened to crush the main opposition party like lice while campaigning for the ruling ZANU-PF party. The European Union, United States, UK, and Australian embassies in Zimbabwe have recently issued statements condemning violence against the newly formed Citizens Coalition for Change (CCC), which is led by Nelson Chamisa. President Mnangagwa told diplomats accredited to Zimbabwe that they would be allowed to observe the elections, but his administration would not allow any interference. President Mnangagwa's administration also accuses Western countries for sponsoring the opposition to effect regime change in Zimbabwe. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, follow, share and like our video. It's the best way of supporting us. Great news! You can now pre-order our children's book, Maua and the Gardens of Plenty, a book that teaches children the power of great ideas. This book is the best way to start exposing your children to African stories told by Africans. Find the purchase link in the description below. You can directly support this new series by becoming our YouTube member, Patreon, or donor. And remember,